After Tom passed, the little house in Salem felt too big for just me. Too quiet, too still. I'd catch myself setting out 2 coffee cups in the morning or folding his sweaters into neat piles that no one would wear again. I told myself the walls were just walls, but every corner carried his voice. So when Jason suggested I move to Pine Hill to be closer to them, it felt like a kind of rescue. "You'll have the kids around," he'd said over the phone. "Emily will love having you nearby. And we can help each other out." I sold the house in the spring. It went in 3 weeks. White siding, blue shutters, the azalea bush I'd planted the year after we moved in. Watching strangers carry boxes through the front door was like watching someone else's dream take root where mine had ended. The money went into their mortgage, almost all of it. "It's basically your house too now," Jason had told me with that easy grin he got from his father. I told myself it was a good arrangement. Family under one roof, shared meals, children's laughter where my quiet had been. The first weeks were warm in every sense. Long dinners, Emily praising my roast chicken, the kids crawling into my lap for bedtime stories. I folded laundry, swept floors, baked pies. When Jason was at work and Emily ran errands, I kept the little ones busy with board games and sidewalk chalk. It wasn't my house, not technically, but there was a rhythm to the days that made me feel useful. One evening in late May, we sat around the dinner table with the windows open. The kids were telling a story about a frog they'd found in the yard, each interrupting the other. I was pouring gravy over the potatoes when Emily laughed and said, "Well, good thing you've got us. On your own, you wouldn't survive." She said it lightly, with that half-smile she wore when she thought she was being clever. Jason chuckled, and the kids didn't look up from their plates. But the words sat there, sharp in the air. I smiled, at least I think I did, and passed the bread basket. The conversation moved on to weekend plans, but my mind stayed with that single sentence. On your own you wouldn't survive. Maybe she didn't mean anything by it. Maybe it was a joke. Still, that night in bed, I replayed her voice in my head. There was something in it, a curl at the edge that didn't feel like kindness. And though the house was full of people, I found myself listening to the walls again. At first, it was easy to tell myself I was imagining things. A comment taken the wrong way, a sigh misheard, a door that closed too quickly behind me. But those little moments began to add up, like drops of water seeping through a roof. Too small to notice until they've already left a stain. The first shift was in the mornings. I used to rise early, put on coffee, and have breakfast ready when the kids came down in their pajamas. Emily had once thanked me for that, saying it was such a help while she got ready for work. Then one day, without warning, she swept the cereal boxes into the pantry before I could pour a bowl. "We're trying to keep things organized," she said. Her tone was cheerful, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. I noticed other changes. My set of kitchen knives disappeared from the block. My favorite mug, the one with the faded lilacs, was nowhere to be found. A week later I saw it in the donation box by the garage door. When I asked, Emily said, "Oh, I didn't think you'd mind." It was chipped. It wasn't. One Tuesday afternoon, I came back from picking up the kids to find my knitting basket gone from the living room. Jason was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. "We're trying to keep things tidy for the kids," he said. All those needles lying around. I'd been knitting for 40 years. No one had ever called it dangerous before. And then there was the matter of the keys. I'd always carried a set to the house. It was practical. I could let myself in if I came home with groceries, or if the kids needed me in a hurry. But one morning, Emily handed me my key on a little dish by the door. "We're changing the locks," she said. "Just for safety. We'll make sure someone's always here when you come over." I lived there, but somehow I'd become a guest. It wasn't just the things they took away, it was the way they stopped saying thank you. Babysitting became expected, not appreciated. I'd have the children all afternoon, feed them dinner, and when Jason and Emily came home, they'd head straight upstairs without a word. The first time it happened, I told myself they must be tired. By the 5th time I knew it was something else. One afternoon, I was in the hallway folding laundry when I heard Emily's voice from the kitchen. I couldn't see her, but I recognized the casual tone she used when she was talking to friends. "She doesn't even realize we're only keeping her here for her money," she said. I froze, a towel half folded in my hands. Her friend laughed short, sharp. Seriously? Seriously? She thinks she's helping. And I mean she is. Just not in the way she thinks. There was a pause, then Emily's voice dropped lower. "Once we're done paying off the refinance, we can figure out what to do next. Jason's thinking maybe we should." The clatter of a pot cut her off. I stepped quietly back into my room and shut the door. I sat there for a long time, the folded towel still in my lap, staring at nothing. It's a strange thing, the moment you realize you've been wrong about people you thought you knew. It doesn't feel like a blow. It feels like the floor shifting under you, slow and quiet, until you're standing somewhere you don't recognize. I didn't confront her. Not then. I didn't tell Jason what I'd heard. But something in me went still, as though I'd stepped into a colder season without noticing. That night at dinner, the kids told me about their day at school. Jason was scrolling through his phone. Emily was smiling, but her eyes slid past me as though I weren't there. I passed the salt when asked, refilled glasses, and kept my voice light. Inside, I was already stepping back from them. It happened on an evening that should have been ordinary. The kind of evening that leaves no trace in memory, except that this one did. Emily had made soup. It was tomato basil, too thin the way she liked it. Jason was late, so I set the table while Emily ladled steaming portions into bowls. The kids were upstairs, their voices drifting faintly down the hall. When Jason walked in, the air felt heavier somehow. He tossed his keys on the counter and gave Emily a quick kiss before sitting. I reached for the breadbasket, and as I set it down, my elbow brushed the edge of my soup bowl. The ceramic tipped. The contents spilled across the table in a red wave, splashing Emily's sleeve. It wasn't much, just an accident, the sort of thing that could happen to anyone. I started to reach for a napkin, murmuring, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Emily spun around. "You're useless," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut the room in half. I froze, my hand in midair. Her face was set, lips thin, eyes narrowed. And before I could speak again, she raised her hand and struck me. The sound was louder than the sting, a flat crack that seemed to echo. Jason stood in the doorway between the kitchen and dining room, holding his phone. For a moment I thought he would come forward, say something, anything. Instead he just looked at me, his mouth twisting. "She's right," he said, each word deliberate. "I wish it had been you instead of Dad." The silence that followed was a different kind of noise. Dense, unbreathable. I felt the air leave me, as if the floor had tilted and I'd slid into a place where gravity worked differently. Emily was already dabbing her sleeve with a napkin, muttering about stains. Jason didn't move. I pushed my chair back slowly. "I think I'll go pack my things." No one stopped me. Upstairs I took my time. My hands moved steadily, folding sweaters, stacking jeans, placing my small box of keepsakes on top of the suitcase. I didn't slam drawers or stomp down the stairs. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me flustered. Half an hour later, my suitcases stood by the front door. Jason handed me my coat but not my key. "Maybe we all just need some space," he said. His voice was neutral, as if this were a temporary quarrel. I stepped outside without replying. The air was cold for that time of year, the street quiet. I walked down the path to the curb, my bags bumping softly against my legs. I didn't look back. That night, I checked into a motel on the edge of town. The kind of place where the bedspread is thin and the walls smell faintly of bleach. I stacked my suitcases against the door, not because I thought anyone would come after me, but because it felt like drawing a line. I sat at the small round table under a dim lamp, hands folded in my lap. The events replayed in my mind, not in sharp flashes, but in slow, deliberate frames. Emily's voice. Jason's eyes. The way they had both stood in their positions, solid and unshaken, while they pushed me out of the life I had given them so much to build. I expected to cry, but the tears didn't come. Instead, there was a coolness spreading through me, quiet and certain. Something had broken, yes, but something else had also settled into place. It was the understanding that there was no going back. The motel room had a single narrow window, the kind you could pull open only a few inches. Outside, the parking lot was lit by 2 buzzing street lamps, their glow broken by the silhouettes of trucks and cars that had been parked there for hours. I sat at the little round table with my suitcase still zipped, a single mug of motel coffee cooling beside me. The lamp's yellow light made my hands look older than they'd seemed at the house. More lined, more real. I pulled out my folder of documents. I'd kept them with me even when I moved in with Jason and Emily. Deeds, bank statements, receipts from the sale of my Salem house. I told myself it was just good record keeping, a habit from when Tom was alive and we still balanced our budget every Sunday night. The papers spread across the table like puzzle pieces. And as I began to read, the puzzle took a shape I hadn't wanted to imagine. Line after line of transactions. Thousands for educational needs that had never been mentioned to me. Transfers from my account to theirs for childcare emergencies. That, as far as I knew, had never happened. And mixed in with these were charges for luxury hotels, airline tickets to cities I'd never visited, jewelry stores far from Pine Hill. I had given willingly, thinking I was helping the kids. Keeping them in sports, making sure their school trips were paid for, covering unexpected doctor's visits. But the numbers told another story. Most of what I'd given had gone toward vacations and indulgences that had nothing to do with the children. I kept reading until my eyes ached. A sharp knock at the door startled me. My first thought was that Jason or Emily had tracked me here, but when I opened it, I found Alex standing there. Alex, Jason's son from his first marriage. I had raised him from the time he was 8, after his mother left. Even when Jason drifted in and out of fatherhood, Alex and I had kept a steady line between us. He was 26 now, tall and serious, wearing a windbreaker zipped to his chin. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped back. "Of course." He took the chair across from me, his eyes flicking to the papers spread out on the table. "I've been meaning to talk to you for a while," he said. "I didn't want to do it at the house." "What is it?" He reached into his backpack and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I've been keeping track of things. For 2 years." Inside the envelope was a stack of photocopies. Property documents with my signature forged at the bottom. Bank forms transferring partial ownership of assets I'd never agreed to sign over, letters from insurance companies addressed to Jason but concerning my accounts. And then there were the notes. Alex's own handwriting in the margins, dates, phone numbers, times of conversations he'd overheard. "They've been planning to have you declared legally incompetent," he said quietly. "If they'd gone through with it, they could have taken your pension, your medical decisions, everything. They were already talking to someone about power of attorney." The words landed like stones in a still pond. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of the street lamp outside filling the silence. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because they're getting close," he said. "And because you've done enough for them. More than enough." We sat for a long moment, the only sound the faint rattle of the motel heater kicking on. Finally, Alex pushed the envelope toward me. "I've already contacted a lawyer. If you want, we can file for a court order to freeze the house and your accounts until this is sorted. We have enough evidence to make it stick." I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I'd helped raise was gone, replaced by a man who carried himself with a steadiness I recognized. "You've thought this through," I said. "I have. And you don't have to do this alone." That night I didn't sleep much. I kept seeing the pages in that envelope, hearing Jason's voice in the doorway. "I wish it had been you instead of Dad." I thought about Emily's smirk over the soup bowl, the key I'd been forced to hand back, the sound of her voice telling a friend I was just there for my money. By morning my decision was made. At 9 a.m., Alex and I were at his lawyer's office. The room smelled faintly of paper and coffee, the kind of place where serious decisions are made without drama. We went through every document, every receipt, every forged signature. The lawyer's expression grew tighter with each page. "You have more than enough to proceed," she said finally. We can get a restraining order, freeze the property, and block access to any of your accounts. Once this is in motion, they won't be able to touch a cent." Alex looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I picked up the pen lying in front of me. My hand was steady. "File it all," I said. When we left the office, the winter air felt sharp and clean in my lungs. I didn't call Jason. I didn't text Emily. I didn't give them a single word of explanation. Some things speak loudest in silence. The morning after we left the lawyer's office, the frost on the motel window had melted into long streaks, and a pale sun sat low over the parking lot. I sipped the burnt motel coffee, scrolling through the news headlines, not because I cared what they said, but because I needed to feel the day starting under my control. The papers Alex's lawyer had filed were already in motion. The house was frozen, every account Jason and Emily had tied to me was locked, and the restraining order meant they couldn't come within 100 feet without breaking the law. I didn't tell them any of this myself. That was the point. Silence is heavier when it's official. By mid-morning the calls began. First Jason, 5 missed calls back to back. Then Emily, her name flashing across the screen in bright white letters. I let them go unanswered. My phone hummed against the table like it was restless. When I didn't pick up, they moved to messages. Emily's came first. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own family. After everything we've done for you." Then Jason. "Mom, this is ridiculous. We just needed a little help. You've always been there for us. Why change now?" I read each one slowly, then set the phone face down. Alex came by that afternoon with 2 cardboard boxes. "These are the last of your things from the house," he said. I made sure nothing was missing. Inside were my photo albums, a stack of Tom's old records, and my knitting basket, the one Jason had said was too dangerous for the kids. I ran my hand over the worn handle, the scent of lavender yarn faint but still there. We spent the afternoon going over more paperwork with the lawyer. Every statement was another small nail in the box they'd built for themselves. Dates of forged signatures, withdrawals they couldn't explain, credit lines they'd opened without telling me. When the lawyer slid the final affidavit across the table, I signed without hesitation. My name looked steady on the page, not at all like someone afraid. The next day, Emily's tone changed. "Please, Mary, let's just talk. We can work this out." By evening, it shifted again. "If you keep this up, you'll never see the kids again. Is that what you want?" I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded every message to the lawyer and deleted them from my phone. The silence between us wasn't just space anymore. It was a wall. 1 week later, I opened my email to find a notification from the court. The first hearing was scheduled for March. Until then, Jason and Emily couldn't touch the house, the accounts, or me. That night, I sat in the motel's single armchair, knitting by the yellow light of the lamp. The yarn moved smoothly between my fingers, each stitch another reminder. I could build something of my own, one loop at a time, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. And I knew, I was only just getting started. The first signs came through other people. Mrs. Kelly, who lived 3 doors down from Jason and Emily, ran into me outside the grocery store. "Saw your son the other day," she said, leaning on her cart. He looked well stressed. I only nodded. There was no point in explaining anything. 2 days later, I overheard Emily's voice before I even answered the phone. She'd left a voicemail. "Mary, I'm not angry anymore, I think you've misunderstood us. We never wanted things to get like this." She paused, then added softly, "The kids miss you." When I didn't respond, the sweetness soured. The next message from Jason was a single line. "You're making a mistake you can't undo." By the 3rd week, it was almost a routine. Morning messages promising reconciliation, evening messages dripping with blame. I kept each one, forwarding them to Alex's lawyer without a single reply. Then one Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at the motel door. Not the light rap of housekeeping, but 3 sharp knocks that made the air feel tight. When I opened it, Jason stood there. He looked tired, hair uncombed, eyes shadowed, but there was still a stubborn set to his jaw. Behind him, Emily was leaning against the railing, arms crossed. "This is ridiculous," he said without preamble. "You've turned my own son against me." "Alex turned himself," I said quietly. "I only gave him the truth." Emily stepped forward. "You're really going to let a lawyer tell you what to do? Your own family, Mary. We're your blood." I thought of the forged signatures, the stolen money, the plan to declare me incompetent. "Blood doesn't give you the right to own me," I said. Jason's expression hardened. "Fine. Then don't come crawling back when you realize no one else will care for you. Close the door." Slowly. Without a word. That night Alex called to check on me. "They're feeling the pressure," he said. "The court date's in 2 weeks. Just hold steady." I told him I was fine, and for the first time it was true. The silence I gave Jason and Emily wasn't anger. It was a boundary. One they could throw themselves against as much as they liked, and it still wouldn't move. They had mistaken my quiet for weakness once. Now they were learning it was the strongest thing I had. The courthouse in Pine Hill was smaller than I remembered. Red brick, tall windows, the flag outside shivering in the March wind. I sat at the petitioner's table with Alex beside me, the manila envelope of evidence stacked neatly between us. Across the aisle, Jason and Emily whispered furiously to their attorney, neither of them meeting my eyes. The hearing lasted less than an hour. The forged documents, the unexplained withdrawals, the messages threatening to cut me off from the children, laid out in sequence, they spoke louder than any testimony I could give. I answered each question the judge asked with calm, steady words. I didn't embellish. I didn't have to. When it was over, the ruling came quickly. Full ownership of the house returned to me, all joint accounts dissolved, and Jason found guilty of financial exploitation. Emily was cited for harassment and elder abuse, with a restraining order extended for another year. I didn't look at them as the gavel fell. Outside, the wind had eased. Alex walked me to the car, carrying the envelope like it was fragile glass. "It's done," he said, opening the passenger door for me. 2 weeks later, I was standing in the front yard of the house in Pine Hill, holding the new keys in my hand. The locks had been changed, the walls painted a fresh cream, the rooms emptied of anything that wasn't mine. Alex had helped me haul in boxes, the two of us working until our shadows stretched long across the lawn. That evening, I brewed a pot of tea and carried my cup to the porch. The air smelled faintly of rain, the sun sinking behind the trees. From here, I could see the lights of the town coming on one by one, steady and quiet. I thought of all the years I'd believed love meant giving until I had nothing left. Of the moments I'd stood in my own kitchen, unwelcome in a house my savings had paid for. Of the voice that had told me, on your own, you wouldn't survive. Now I was here, on my own, and the silence was not empty but full. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I didn't need to answer their calls or open their letters, or even wonder if they thought of me. I belonged to myself again. And that, I realized as I sipped my tea, was more than enough.